Hello, I'm Paul Pirello, and welcome to the Philly Factor. Well, when it comes to movies about Philadelphia, there are really two periods, BR and AR. BR before Rocky, AR after Rocky. While Sylvester Stallone and Rocky put Philadelphia literally on the silver screen for local film production, the city has been the setting for a number of movies before the 1976 movie of Rocky. Of course, there was most notably the musical 1776, Kitty Foyle in 1940, The Philadelphia Story, also 1940, and The Trouble with Angels in 1966. Well, there's a new book out which documents Philadelphia's rich history when it comes to movies. The name of the book is called Filmadelphia, a celebration of a city's movies. It's authored by Irv Slifkin, writer and editor for Movie Buzz, the web zine at Movies Unlimited. Irv has written about movies for Entertainment Weekly, Philadelphia Magazine, the Los Angeles Times, the Chicago Tribune, and the Hollywood Reporter. And he joins us here on the Philly Factor to talk about his new book, Filmadelphia. Irv, good to see you.
Great to see you, Paul.
This is a wonderful book.
Well, thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
It's a great resource, and it's about time somebody finally decided to put it together because, I know Irv and our paths have crossed so many times before. Whenever you try to find information about movies shot here in Philadelphia, set here in Philadelphia, you would have to scramble to try to get the information. Is that what prompted you to write this book?
That was one of the reasons. We just thought it was about time we had it all in one volume. And you're right, things are scrambled, they're scattered. You can't go to one volume and find everything, and we wanted to put it all together and make something entertaining at the same time.
Now, I think you would agree that, you know, we could sort of break this down into two periods, the BR, which is before Rocky,
Sure.
and AR after Rocky. But then you get those people that say, well, you know, what about the Philadelphia Story, which, you know, was set in Philadelphia and it was done in 1940, but it was not filmed in Philadelphia, right? But there have been movies that Philadelphia has had sort of like the, you know, the location and sort of the centerpiece of the film, but film production really didn't start to take off here until Stallone decided to do the original Rocky movie.
Yeah, there were a couple films here and there that were shot here, but before Rocky, there were several movies that were set here, and they might have used a shot here or a location set there in Philadelphia, but most of them were shot in and around Hollywood or sometimes even in Toronto or somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Was it because at the time when, you know, in the early years of Hollywood, that since all the film production was being done in Hollywood, that there just wasn't money in the budget to film the Philadelphia Story in Philadelphia? I mean, because was it technically they couldn't do it because of the, you know, the bulkiness and the you know, just to cart everything clear across the country to do it? Was that the reason why?
Well, I mean, you know, MGM restaged the burning of Atlanta on the back lot, so they just sort of did almost everything, you know, on the lot. I mean, there are some exceptions. There's a film in the book called Pride of the Marines with John Garfield from 1945. And it's a true story about Al Schmidt, who was a Marine who was born and raised in Tacony. And there's an amazing amount of location stuff in the film. And, you know, it just surprises you, you know, while you're researching this, that there actually is stuff shot and set in Philly, how much there is out there. But, you know, it's before Rocky, not that much.
So Stallone comes along in '75. He makes this movie. It wins the Academy Award in '76.
Yes.
And so why then, it's funny because, you know, for the most part, now everybody thinks of Philadelphia, they think of Rocky, but prior to that, it was, you know, of Philadelphia, it must be the Liberty Bell. So Stallone comes along, wins the Academy Award, and he puts the city on the silver screen.
He does. I mean, he showed a view of the city that people had not seen before. You saw the working class part of the city, you saw Kensington, you saw the glorious, you know, the art museum step sequence. It really is a great overview of the city, and that sort of ignites Hollywood. Hey, wake up! You know, there is a city here that has lots to offer for location, and that sort of gets the ball rolling.
And from what I've heard with many of the productions that have come since Rocky, is that the city offers a real unique blend of architecture. So if you're looking to do a period piece, whether it's 18th century, you're looking to do something contemporary, is that the city really has a setting for regardless of what it is that you're looking for.
Yeah, there's an incredible diversity in the surroundings in Philadelphia, and you will see period films done here. You'll see modern films done here. You know, and Philly has a lot to offer. Plus, it's in close proximity to New York. So if you need anything, you know, New York's a film capital, you could bring it down here. It's not that far, it's not that expensive. So I think those are some of the factors that attract people to the city.
I also want to get into, during our program here, to talk about this other great resource you have towards the back of the book, the names of actors and actresses that either were born in the greater Philadelphia area or lived here for a short period of time, because again, it's another great resource. What has been the reaction so far from, you know, the book's been out since right before the holidays, so what has been the reaction of both movie buffs, movie fans, and people who just, you know, have a desire to find out things that are purely Philadelphia?
Well, I guess this is a compliment. I heard people were actually fighting over copies at Christmas time.
It is a compliment,
at their local
sure.
bookstore, and there were women crying that they couldn't get it for their husbands, and you know, men crying that they couldn't get it. So that's a good thing. That was sure. Christmas time. But the reaction's been very favorable. It's been, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know this person was born here. I didn't know that movie was shot here. Great. Now I know the name of the movie I saw when I was a kid, because I knew they had some Philadelphia stuff there. So it's been pretty much, you know, very positive, which I'm thrilled about.
Sure. How easy then was it to write this book? Because you have all this information and you have personally all this knowledge about movies. So I'm guessing it had to be kind of easy to put it all together in one book?
Well, you would
you would think
so.
Right.
The deadline was a little tight. We wanted to get out for Christmas, and so the deadline was tough. And I just assumed, silly me, that, you know, all the information, especially about the locations, because with each entry, each film entry, we tell you where it was shot and some of the settings that were used in the film, that all that would be in one, you know, file somewhere in City Hall or at the film office. Well, I learned very late in the game that it wasn't, so I sort of had to scramble, and that was part of the fun and part of the challenge as well, Paul, to find out where certain scenes were shot, you know, where the bench was, where Kevin Bacon has this famous scene in The Woodsman, or where, you know, Rocky III, where a certain thing happened, and it wasn't easy to do, but I'm glad that I did, and I'm glad it's all in one volume now, so.
And you're not only focusing on films that were shot in Philadelphia, but also in the surrounding area. So you're also looking at South Jersey. You're also looking in, you know, Montgomery County. So it's not, you know, most people think Philadelphia. They're thinking trading places with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. Well, that's in Philadelphia. Rocky was in Philadelphia, but you're also going geographically sort of outside the city limits.
Yeah, the Delaware Valley and a little bit beyond. There's a whole section on movies that were shot or set down the shore. There's, you know, we go up to Lancaster for Witness, and we go down to Delaware for Dead Poet Society. So we're sort of all over the area.
Yep, and also not only movies, but also television shows, because I think what also happens is, you know, I guess people realize that as television gets easier to do, you could sort of take, you know, your whole production company and sort of set up shop in Philadelphia, as the case of Hack, that, you know, they actually were able to convince CBS to shoot the show that lasted for 2 or 3 seasons.
Yeah, I believe 2. Yeah.
So you also have television production and television shows set in Philadelphia, or actually done here in Philadelphia, also included in the book.
Yep, we have a whole section on that as well. And we also have some interviews throughout the book. And you mentioned Hack, David Morse, who is not from Philadelphia. He's from Boston and lived in L.A. He moved to Philly because he loved it so much. And I got him to talk candidly about what it is to live here and to shoot Hack here as well. So that was fun.
Is this a definitive work? I mean, as we sit here and discuss the book today, I mean, is it pretty much from start to finish? I mean, of course, we could sit here 10 years from now, and it'll probably be maybe the second or the third volume of this, because hopefully more production and more movies will be set in Philadelphia. But at least from your perspective, is this pretty much all of it jammed into this book?
Up to the minute, I believe I got just about everything that I wanted. Another challenge of doing the book was finding some of these movies. They're not as accessible. You just can't go down to the local video store and find them. I just had to sort of find them through the internet, through people who knew people, and that was fun too. But I think this is the basis of, you know, quote, the volume, this directory. And there's movies coming out next week that were shot here. You just, you know, it's just going to keep growing. Sure.
And your work with Movies Unlimited, you were able to go to that big catalog and page through it?
Well, I mean, yeah, what I could find there, yeah, but not everything was that accessible, even on with my access to it.
Yeah. This is the second book that you wrote, and it's much different than the other book. And I wanted to mention the other book officially by title. It is, let me see here in my notes, the name of the book is Video Hound's Groovy Movies, Far Out Films of the Psychedelic Era. That's a much different book than this. That's a bigger book than this. So did you, did you have sort of, I mean, writing a book is writing a book, but, there's two different areas altogether. I mean, they're dealing with movies, but dealing with movies shot in Philadelphia and dealing with movies of a specific era. Any challenges in sort of, meeting this book head on, but maybe lessons that you were able to use from the last book that made this a little bit easier for you?
I don't know if it made it easier, but I actually tried to use some of the things I did in the first book in this book, and sort of give the reader more than what they expect. With that, I mean, essentially there are reviews of the movies that are set in Philly, but there's also quotes from the movies, and there's also biographies in it, and there's also little sidebars throughout. So I used that, which is, in the first book, and I brought it to this book and sort of narrowed the subject to just the city and the area and the movies. So we sort of encapsulated that with a different subject.
The setting out to write a book is, it's got to be a very rewarding experience. It's very challenging, and given the, I guess the parameters that are given to you by the publisher, and then they say, well, we wanted it yesterday, and you're still, piecing it all together. What type? Give us an idea of what type of internal or personal deadlines you have to meet in order to meet the publisher's deadline. I mean, because the tendency is always to think, well, I'll take care of it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll check that fact out tomorrow. But you know that you're eventually going to hit that wall. You're going to hit that deadline, and you got to have it all together.
Yeah, well, it's tricky. You have to really be. I learned this from the first book. You really have to be organized, and I'm not usually the most organized person in the world. So I learned that in order to get it done, it has to be organized, and you have to know what you do and set up your own deadlines. I want to do this review then, and I want to go to the library and research that day, and you just sort of have to schedule it out. And then the writing, for me, usually happens at night because that's my free time, and I just kept going and going until I got tired. So it's kind of a fun but exhausting process, and like you said, when it's all done, it's very rewarding just to see it. When you get the box of books, it's very exciting.
Sure. We talked about some of the bigger movies, the blockbusters, the Rocky movies that were made here, but there were this area also tends to be sort of like a growth area for independent films. Yep. I mean, and Lee Daniels, I think, and and there's a few pages dedicated to Lee, towards the end of the book. This guy who grew up in North Philadelphia, he makes these, actually signs on as a producer for Monsters Ball, then makes his own movie and gets big name talent. But again, independent film though. I mean, you're not seeing the major studios running after Lee Daniels, at least as we're speaking now, signing him up to do a movie. But this area has tremendous talent when it also comes to independent film production.
Yeah, it does, and it's growing. It's being nurtured. People see like a Lee Daniels do well, and they get excited. Schools have major programs, on film production more than ever. There's more students enrolled in communications programs here, as you know. So I think it's a growing thing. In fact, in the book, there's an interview with a couple of Philly guys that moved out to LA, and they made a film. And when they came here for a film festival, they were amazed at how many other filmmakers they made in the area, and they were thinking of moving back here. So it's great. I mean, if you're Philadelphian, you have to feel very positive about what's going on film-wise in the city.
When, and I'm guessing, and you would know best, when Stallone decides to make the first Rocky movie and the subsequent movies here in Philadelphia, the fact of the matter is, was there an organized film office back in the mid-'70s to sort of help him with his production? Was there a, now it's sort of a given, when word hits the street that so-and-so is thinking of making a movie or doing a television series or going to do it in Philadelphia, the one-stop shop is to go to Sharon Pickinson's office, and she's the resource to get this thing done. But back in the 70s, was there a resource like that?
There really wasn't the time that Rocky was made. The film office, I believe, started in the 1980s here. And actually, I believe it started as a Pennsylvania film office.
You're right, yeah.
And then it sent, there was one in Philly and one in Pittsburgh, and there still is a Pennsylvania office. So it sort of came of term later on post-Rocky. And I think because of Rocky, really, Rocky begat the film office and the whole idea. And maybe Rocky begat it throughout the entire country, because it's it's such a successful, sort of regional film that people, in other cities realized, aside from New York and LA, that Chicago, and other areas needed something like that. So
I think, even now as they're starting to rebuild New Orleans, there's a big effort to sort of attract production there, and on whether there's anything organized or not, but I know that in the wake of Katrina, they actually decided to reach out to productions, and I think even Lee Daniels was, I may be wrong on this, but he was also talking about doing a film down south there as sort of a way to help spur the economy that suffered so much in the aftermath of Katrina. The most startling revelation when you decided to take this on, the thing that struck you as the most, boy, I didn't know that fact as you were starting to do this book?
I think it was just the dearth of the people that were either born in Philadelphia or sort of came through the area, either school or they lived here or they moved here, and I was just astonished. When when the publisher came to me and asked me to do the book, they said, "Is there a book in this?" I had done an article for Philadelphia Magazine, a list, and they said, "Do you think there's a book here?" And I said, "I'm not sure." And then the further I went, I said, "Yeah, there's a couple hundred pages here," and and the more research I did, the more I learned, and that's what I tried to do in the book, Paul, is to put things in there that I didn't know, that hopefully other people don't know, and they'll learn from the book. I didn't know Richard Gere was born in Philadelphia. I had no clue. Yeah. I didn't know, all these great directors were from Philly. Sidney Lumet and Irvin Kershner and Arthur Penn and Cy Enfield, who directed Zulu, one of my favorite action movies. I didn't know these guys were all from Philly. So that's really the great revelation of the book, is the talent that is from Philly and still coming out from Philly.
And we should, squash the rumors right here that Stallone was not born in Philadelphia. He was born in New York,
yes.
and that's included in the book. But Larry Fine is born in Philadelphia.
4th and Bainbridge, yeah.
And of course, there's a restaurant right there on the corner, and there's a mural there.
Right.
Larry Fine of the Three Stooges. Ed Wynn, also one of those character actors that we're familiar with, whether it was from Mary Poppins or some of the other movies that he was in. Born in Philadelphia.
Yeah. There's a whole slew of them. It just, that's the great thing. Was finding out that these people were from here, and also, we included New York. And Paul Robeson spent a lot of time in Philly. Was born, I believe, in Trenton, and Callista Flockhart moved here. She wasn't really. People say, "Oh yeah, she's from Medford." No, she was born somewhere else and moved to Medford. So I wanted to straighten all this stuff out and sort of give people the facts in an entertaining way, and maybe solve some bets while I'm at it.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. How easy is it to sort of track down, some of these people, where they were born, or whether they were born here and then they moved away, or they lived somewhere else, like in the case of Stallone? And I don't even know, I think when Stallone announced that he was going to do the 6th installment, it may have come out then that, or maybe years before, but, Philadelphia sort of embraced him as, our hero. He was our Rocky. And then, because I told the story before, how it came out that he would, on his website said that he was born in New York, and then people started saying, like, well, no, wait a minute, Sly, he's from Philadelphia. He went to school in Northeast Philadelphia. How could he be born in New York, but, good? So, I mean, how easy was it to sort of track down their lineage or their past in some cases?
In some cases it was easy, but in a lot of the cases it was not so easy, because you have certain sources that you go to, and they contradict each other sometimes. So what's right? If one says New York and one says Philadelphia, what's right? So that was sort of, I was sort of Solomon trying to figure this out, and sometimes it takes a couple phone calls, or talking to an agent, or talking to somebody even that made a movie with him, or a director, and that's sort of the stuff you don't see in the book, the work that went into it as well. So not all of it was right there. and everything has to be double-checked and triple-checked as well when you do a book.
But didn't you have like a whole staff of like dozens of researchers to help you with this?
No. No, it was pretty much me.
Yeah. But again, when all is said and done, it's gratifying that you're able to put this book together, and knowing that that you checked and double-checked and triple-checked some cases all the facts and figures, making sure that they were correct, and that says a lot about your willingness to get the information correct and get it in the book.
Yeah, I think we did pretty well. I mean, I've gotten some emails and some letters that's saying, some minor quibbles with things, but generally, I think we're really close to being perfect.
Mm-hmm. Again, the name of the book, ladies and gentlemen, is Filmadelphia, a celebration of a city's movies. And it really is a great resource. It's got movies in there. What was the earliest movie that either shot here in Philadelphia or is set here in Philadelphia? Now you could say, well, of course, it had to be 1776 because that's when the country started. So if we're talking about the movie that has the earliest setting for Philadelphia, it had to be, was it 1776?
Yeah, I believe that would be the earliest.
And do we have any idea, right off the top of your head, the first production that actually happens here in Philadelphia?
Yeah, this was one of the great discoveries for me in the book. There was a gentleman named Sigmund Lubin, and I do a whole section of him on the book, and he, Hollywood could have actually been in Philadelphia if he was successful. He started a film studio here at 9th and Arch, and he had one out in Valley Forge, and at one time he was competing with Thomas Edison as one of the people that were making movies. And he made his first films in the late 1800s, in the area, and he made hundreds and hundreds of films. He was a real character. He would restage historical things that happened and pass them off as being the real film of certain things. And he also invented projectors, and he owned movie theaters, and he was really a mogul, like one of the first Hollywood moguls, but based in Philadelphia for the most part. So, I mean, the early days of film are really also the early days of film in Philadelphia. It really was one of the places where film was born, long before there was a Hollywood.
So what happens then? Why do they, we could have been sitting in the Hollywood Hills right here, we could have been sitting in Hollywood Hills.
Yeah, well, what happened was that Lubin wasn't a great businessman, and there was a huge fire that occurred where he kept all his films in Valley Forge, and a lot of what he had went up in flames. And then he was constantly in court with Edison. They were just both trying to go for the patent, certain patents with early projectors and film, and it just didn't work out for him. He ended up going back into the optical business. That's where he started, as an optician, and I believe he died like in Ventnor or Margate in the early 1900s, 1950, 1920, something like that. But for a long time, Philadelphia hosted as many productions as anywhere else in the world.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Also television, and it seems like, everybody thinks of, television sort of starting here, and maybe the early days of, everybody thinks of, bandstands started here in Philadelphia. But then all of a sudden, shows took place either in California or New York. Geographically, they were always set on the West Coast or New York City. And then it seemed like the 80s, all of a sudden, was it 30-something, where they decided that, and I guess because the creators of 30-something were from Philadelphia, they decided to put the setting for their show in suburban Philadelphia. Philadelphia was the setting. And then all of a sudden, it seemed like every show that was coming out had some type of connection to Philadelphia. So what makes Philadelphia like a hot commodity all of a sudden, and then it sort of like wanes, and then it comes back?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a hipness quotient for a while, like a city becomes hip because one of the shows becomes popular. That could be it. But like you said, with the films, there's a great diversity here. For a long time, a lot of the Philadelphia films were about the main line or about Philadelphia lawyers. It seems to be a very common theme. So, later people discover that there's a working class side to Philadelphia. So then you see that in the TV shows, and Philadelphia, of course, had a reputation for law enforcement of what was going on, during the Rizzo era here. So you see that in some of the shows. So I think it depends on, it's a cycle. What about Philadelphia draws the TV shows here, the subject.
Rocky Balboa, of course, Stallone finally brings, the whole Rocky, circle to completion here. Could he have done this movie anywhere else but Philadelphia?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that was one of the great things about the movie to me, was it was so Philadelphia. I mean, except for you know, the final stuff that was shot in Las Vegas.
Sure.
You know, the whole film was shot here, as far as I know, and they used locations and they used existing businesses. They changed them around, obviously, but that to me was gratifying, just to watch that happen here. So I don't think he could have done it. You have to go back to the roots that made that character successful, and thankfully he did for the most part.
And while he brings his character and ties up all the loose ends of the Rocky storyline, hopefully it doesn't sort of close the door on future films and television production or movies or shows set here in Philadelphia. I mean, hopefully this, you know, continues to grow by leaps and bounds.
There's already, I think, 7 or 8 films that are coming out this year. It's incredible, and there's, you know, obviously still TV shows that are going on set in Philadelphia, and I just read there's some more that are being set up to be shot here or set here. So it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It's really incredible. Whatever the cycle is, we're definitely in the middle of it now.
Well, and it also make for, you know, follow-up book, I'm sure, for, you know, a few years down the road. And how do you stay on top of it then? I mean, you obviously having written for all these great publications, being intimately involved with, you know, with movies through Movies Unlimited, and, you know, so how do you sort of stay on top of it to make sure that you continue to acquire this wealth of information, so this way when, you know, your publisher comes to you in 2 or 3 years and says, okay, let's do a follow-up to it. So what are you doing right now to make sure that you have that stuff readily available?
Well, that's a good idea. I should be
Just
keeping
remember
tabs.
who gave you the
yes,
idea.
I will. I will definitely big thank you, and, you know, maybe a check in the mail. But no, I'm keeping track of the films, you know, as they come out. You know, I'm you know, writing them up and figuring out the locations and trying to stay on top of it as well as I can. So I think next week a film opens called Pride, and then there's a film called Shooter, and they're going to be shooting a Janis Joplin film here, which I don't know why, but for whatever reason. So there's lots of major films being done coming out now, which will get definitely in the next volume.
Yeah, when I saw that the Janis Joplin film was going to shoot in Philadelphia, I didn't know of any obvious connection. I don't know, maybe it just makes better sense to shoot here in Philadelphia?
Well, I found a connection. I was trying to figure that out. The connection is that the star of it is Gyllenhaal, and no, I'm sorry, the star of it is Zooey Deschanel, and her father is Khalid Deschanel, is a great cinematographer, and he's from Philadelphia.
How about that?
So maybe she wants to go back to the old family place and shoot it here. That's the connection that I found.
Interesting. In the 2 minutes that we have left, best all-time Philadelphia television series.
Best TV series. Well, I liked 30-something when it was around. I think that's really good, and I like Tact. I think Tact's a very underrated show. It's good. So those are my favorites.
Okay, television and all-time Philadelphia movie.
Well, it's interesting. I had not seen this film before I got to the book, but it's called My Architect, and it's a terrific documentary because it's a mystery, it's a father-son movie, and it tells you a lot about the city. So I highly recommend that. If you just pick a regular film, I'm going to have to go with probably Rocky.
Rocky. You can't go wrong with Rocky.
Got to say Rocky.
Yeah, the first Rocky, because by the time it gets to Rocky 5, you got to sort of wonder what's going on in Sly's mind there.
The original's the best.
Yeah. And you liked Rocky Balboa?
Yes.
For the most part?
Very much. Yeah, I did like that.
It is all in this book, ladies and gentlemen, and I encourage you to go out and get it right now. It's available in bookstores. It is from Middle Atlantic Press. You can go online at middleatlanticpress.com, find out more information about the book. But it's in bookstores, a celebration of a city's movies, Filmadelphia, by our guest, Irv Slifkin. And Irv, it's always a pleasure to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Continued success, best of luck.
Thanks.
And I'm sure we will, we're going to continue to watch how well this book is doing and just see where film production and television production goes in the great city of Philadelphia. And we owe it all. It's finally at one place, one resource, and it's in the book Filmadelphia by Irv Slifkin. My thanks for Irv being with us here on the program. My name is Paul Perillo. Thanks so much for being with us here on the Philly Factor.